Here we go.
Okay, gotta click that little okay, or it's just going to be there all night. What is Canvas? Canvas is the process of determining the votes have been counted, tabulated, and culminated in the authenticity of the official election results, the final results. That's the same. Next slide. Okay, I'm going through what's happening this week and next week because this week is a little bit different than this year than it hasn't been in the past. So I want to give everybody a day-by-day calendar of what's going to be happening before the election, on election day, and then after the election. November 4th, which is tomorrow, people who are working the polls are going to be setting up their precincts. And every county has their final, well, there's penultimate, not the ultimate, but the penultimate absentee ballot review meeting to go over the ballots that arrived since the last absentee ballot review meeting. And so that, for some of us, will be another very long day, and some of us not so long. Today is when we vote, and the unofficial results are reported. And then the official canvass is November 6th through 15th, the day after the election. Next slide, please. Okay, tomorrow's meeting. For ballots that have not been approved, the cure options will be generally issued by phone or email. Occasionally they will be mailed, but they will really try to get a hold of the voters to let them know that there was a problem with their ballot. Depending on what the problem is, the cure documentation needs to be returned on the day before canvass. All photo IDs or ID exception forms may be cured up to 5 p.m. on the day before canvass. Any spoiled ballots will not be reissued. The voter will be contacted and advised to vote in person on election day. They'll do their best to let them know that their ballot was not going to be counted and that they need to vote in another way. Okay, next slide. Election day, November 5th. This is when things are get a little different. So all the precincts are open. That's the same. These are reminders. Registered voters can only vote at their assigned precinct. Absentee ballots must be delivered and received in the correct CBOE office by 7:30 p.m. So you cannot send your absentee ballot to another county or deliver it to another county. It needs to be in your home county, except, this is the exception, people who are in one of those, I think, 25 North Carolina disaster counties. Those counties can deliver their ballots to any North Carolina office. And here's another important thing. It has to go to the office. You cannot take your absentee ballot to a precinct anywhere in the state. Okay, next slide. On election day, at 5 o'clock, there will be another absentee review meeting absentee count meeting. I don't think in many of the counties they will actually do a review. They're going to be a little busy on election day, so they will essentially just log them in, and they may make a public report of this. Just to let you know that all of these meetings on election day are public, open to the public. I don't recommend you make an effort to go to any of these meetings. I think you'll be otherwise busy. Voter challenges can be received up till 5 o'clock. And then the hearing will be held after canvass election day, but before canvass. There should be a list that becomes public of all the voter challenges that are outstanding. The members of the Board of Election will complete all the documentation of the absentee ballots that were received so far. And then at 7:30, all the polls close. And at 7:30, not until 7:30, can they count the early voting ballots and the absentee ballots. Now, this is different. This is different than it was in 2020 and in 2022. The results are going to be significantly delayed. If you were paying attention during the primary, you will have realized that the results came in quite a bit later. Usually in the old days, before 2022, at 7:30, you'd start seeing results for North Carolina. This year, no, you're not going to see them. You may not see them for another hour or 2 hours, and that anywhere, because it takes a lot of time for let's go to the next slide. Let's see if we talk. I can't remember if I talk. Yeah. It takes time for those tabulators to be closed. I don't know if any of you have worked on a precinct and at close of polls. It takes a while for them to close that tabulator down and hit the tape. And that has to be done for every single early voting tabulator. And then there's usually one, maybe more than one absentee ballot tabulator. So it takes time for all that paperwork to be done before they're actually going to report the results. And then the election day ballots, those come into the office, are delivered by the precinct officials, and then the county boards start uploading the results from those tabulators. So it all takes time. So don't expect to see anything from North Carolina for maybe 9 o'clock if you're lucky. Okay, next slide. Okay, monitoring canvass. Remember, our goal is to help communities vote and to understand where the election results come from and learn the pitfalls that affect voters who show up to vote but don't have their ballots counted due to issues with voter registration, photo ID, or absentee ballot delivery and witness deficiencies. So we want to know why a vote wasn't counted, or why a ballot was only partially counted. We want to know the reason why. So that's what you need to focus your note-taking on if you can. Next slide. Okay. There's going to be a lot of meetings this year, partly because of the number of ballots and partly because of the imposition of photo ID. So on the next week, this Thursday and Friday, there are going to be ID exception form reviews. So all the exception forms that were part of a ballot at early voting or on election day are going to be reviewed. And the reason why they're doing this early is that the voter must be notified if additional cure is needed. And so then they have a week, well, or less than a week to get that cure in. It needs to come in by next Thursday, the 14th at 5 o'clock. And then so next week, I put November 11th, but I forgot it's Veterans Day, so I don't think anybody's meeting on Veterans Day. So that means Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're going to see pre-canvas, or except Friday's canvas. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're going to see pre-canvas meetings that are going to cover the sample audit, the provisional audit, additional absentee audit, and reconciliation. And then on November 15th at 11 o'clock, all the counties meet to canvass the election results and to issue the certification, the election certification. And we know how important it is, that election certification. Okay, next slide. The county board is required by law to authenticate the election results at the conclusion of canvass in the form of an official abstract of the vote totals. This is really important. The county board is required to certify the election, except for if there's a protest. And, well, that's never happened, but I would assume that this year we'll see some of that. Okay. Will the slides be available to us? Yes, I think Andrea is going to post the slides along with the recording on the website. Okay, next slide. All right, provisional ballot review. Provisional ballots are approved, partially approved, or denied. And there can be, in some counties, a lot of provisional ballots. And when you're doing your report, I'm keeping track of the numbers is good just to keep you on track. But what's really important is the discussion as to why a ballot was not approved or partially approved. That discussion is what's really critical. And in particular, if there's a vote, it's really important. Even if they end up agreeing by majority, 3-2, 4-1, whatever, it's really important to know what the arguments were for the board member who disagreed or disputed that ballot. Voters use, I think most of us know what a provisional ballot is. It's to deal with voter error, such as registering to voter error due to voter registration, voter error due to ID, not having an ID, or voter error due to showing up in the wrong precinct. Those are just examples. There's many more reasons why a voter could make a mistake and need to do a provisional ballot. Occasionally, there's an administrative error that a voter was marked as already voted when it was they hadn't voted. It was an incorrect marking. Sometimes if a voter is marked inactive when they shouldn't have been marked inactive, they'll have to vote provisional. And there are other reasons. So anytime, I think going back to our goals in paying attention to these provisional ballots is partly to make sure every ballot is counted correctly, but it's also to recognize that when we're doing our voter outreach and our voter education, that we start learning of the issues that cause voters to have problems. And that is, I want to say, probably at least 75% of these issues should be and can be addressed through better voter outreach and voter education. Yes, that should be done by the State Board of Elections. Yes, that should be done by the county boards of elections. But realistically, it comes to a lot of our groups that are doing the kind of day-to-day voter outreach that we need to understand things that trip up voters and help them not get tripped up the next time they vote. Okay, next slide. Okay, another part of what I'm calling provisional ballot review, but really isn't a provisional ballot, which is the same-day registrations. This year, the same-day registrations are different because of the 7-day mail verification. So that is important to listen closely to any same-day registrations that are kicked out of the system because of a failure on mail. And what efforts did they make to get in touch with the voter? Things like that. Those numbers and those reasons are really important because this is different this year. Okay, next slide. Okay, the sample audit and reconciliation. The sample audit is a good thing to understand how it works. I don't know that you really want to watch it. If you want to watch it, that's great. But it's the hand-eye count of 2 precincts in every county. Those precincts are selected at random by the state board, and they usually do a race that occurs on every ballot. So they'll probably do the presidential race, and 2 workers, one from each county, hand count the ballots. And this is actually what also happens in a recount. Each ballot is examined and the votes are counted. That's a sample audit. And the purpose of that is to make sure that the tabulator is accurately reading the results of the ballots. Okay, reconciliation. That is where all the paperwork needs to match up, where the voted and unvoted ballots must match the initial ballot supply inventory. The authorization to vote forms must match the ballot tabulator, meaning if you have, 1,200 authorizations to vote, you better have 1,200 ballots in the ballot box. And if you don't, there needs to be an explanation as to where that extra ballot or that missing ballot is. And then they also finish up the paperwork on all provisional, spoiled, and emergency bin ballots. And then sometimes if you're lucky, there's a discussion of things that happened at certain precincts and certain problems that have occurred. If they discuss that in public, please take good notes on that because that's really important to have for you to follow up on in your county. And if there are any challenges, that should be a discussion of how many challenges, and there might even be, because we're pretty unfamiliar with this, there may be a list of the voters whose ballots were challenged. And that would be great if you could get that list. But I'm not sure how that works. Okay, next slide. Okay, and so the value of the sample audit it helps you talk about the ballot counting process and the role of scanners and tabulators. And when somebody says, let's just hand count all the ballots and not use the tabulators, you can say that's a very bad idea, and you can understand how bad an idea that is. And the reconciliation, it also helps you understand how much effort that the county boards go into making the paper trail, the audit trail of voting, and that everything matches up and everything's on the up and up. Okay, next slide. And then there will be the additional absentee review. So remember, all those absentee ballots that came in on election day have by and large not been reviewed. All the UOCAVA, that's the military and overseas voters, they have an additional window to return their ballots. So those will be reviewed and counted. And then for those of you who are in one of those 25 disaster counties, the ballots are going to be coming into your office from around the state. So let's say you're in Buncombe County, and somebody delivered a ballot to Mecklenburg. That ballot is going to have to make its way from Mecklenburg to Buncombe. It's still eligible to be counted because it was logged, and it came in time, but it needs to be reviewed and counted. And the other thing is there's no possibility of cures or correcting deficiencies for these ballots. Okay, so that's important to know. Okay, recounts, challenges, and protests. Those are the big unknown. Recounts, we know what a recount is. So that's just if in case of a close election, there's certain thresholds that they can recommend for a recount. The State Board of Elections issues the authority for a recount, and that may happen. That's pretty common. That happens a lot. The challenges and the protests, not so much. We don't know. Those are big unknowns. So just trying to learn and understand and write down everything on that, because it's the great unknown. And that's the big scary part, where if our election's not certified, and certain counties do not certify the election. That's the big scary part. And so that's what keeps us all up at night. Okay, next slide. All right. My advice to you is that your goal is to not intervene. If you see something that you really think is very wrong, in terms of decisions that are being made by board members, actions being taken by staff, you need to call the voter assistance hotline because you're in no position to take action. I highly discourage any league member from doing that. And the other thing to remember is that most of these counties there are gonna be lawyers galore attending canvass. So you don't need to worry that somebody is not paying attention. But if you think somebody isn't paying attention and you really see something bad, go ahead and call the hotline and alert them to what you see. Okay, and online we have our Canvas guide that essentially it's a two-pager that just goes through these facts as a reference point if you want to print that out and take it with you. And then the state board has a numbered memo. I want to say, when I looked at it, I can't remember. It's like 20, 30 pages worth of guidance on what they think is every situation that could occur and the guidance on that decision that the board is going to use. And if you are the kind of person who wants to double and triple check what the board members and the staff are doing, you can read that provisional ballot, that numbered memos 2023-04, and it just goes through in great detail the review of provisional ballots, which is what's going to take up most of the time for your canvas. Okay, next slide. And last but not least, please file your report. It's super important. I read all of these reports, and it's very important that that we kind of compare and contrast what's going on around the state, because what's happening in one county is not necessarily being duplicated in another county. And to know that kind of variation and to understand that kind of variation is really useful. So filing your report is wonderful. And if you have more than one person going to Canvas, I like lots of reports, if you can, because everybody sees something different, hears something different, and it's really good to get everybody's view on what they saw and what they heard. Okay, I think that's it.